Hi everyone, it's Miss Elise from the Morristown and Township Library, and today I have another art adventure for you inspired by the work of Japanese artist Miss Yayoi Kusama. Specifically, I wanted to talk about her work Pumpkin, or her motifs of pumpkins throughout a lot of her pieces. The most recent addition to her style is in the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art in Humlebach. It is only about 10 years old, but the motif has been in her work since her early elementary school age in her drawings she did then. The most recent addition is a sculpture, but she has also painted pumpkins similar to this style in the Nihonga Japanese art style, which is a style of painting which encompasses solely Japanese conventions, materials, and techniques. A lot of Kusama's work is representative of her psyche. Since she went through trauma as a child, she now has vivid hallucinations, which cause her to see polka dots in vibrant colors, flowers, and pumpkins. These continuous motifs in her work shows her passion of repetition and the therapeutic properties it has for her. It allows for her to be able to show the inside of her mind, to transport the viewer into a new perspective of how she sees her daily life. Her artwork featuring the pumpkins are incredibly homey to her. She says that pumpkins are quite like humans because they have a humanist form, a warm feeling, and a human-like quality, which can be overtly conveyed through her organic paintings here and the really kind of flowing structure of her sculptures. The pumpkin allows for her to feel safe and at home within herself, which is why she paints them or they reappear quite frequently in her work. It allows her to feel a little bit safer in her own mind, which the viewer can also feel very deeply. She was incredibly inspired by the pop art period in artwork, which is why the dots are everywhere. Not only is it a way for her to cope with herself, but it also allows for her to flourish because pop art generally uses a lot of polka dots. She's also inspired by minimalism and surrealism and abstract expressionism. She ultimately is the most famous Japanese artist to still be living today, and is so influential in continuing the movements of pop art and introducing installation and exhibition pieces, which are truly interactive and display self-expression of her hallucinations in a therapeutic and beautiful way. So, without further ado, now that we know a little bit more about Kusama's pumpkins, let's create our own pumpkins inspired by her work. So, let's get into the craft. So these are the materials we are going to be using today for our craft. As you can see, there are very few as opposed to last week and the week before that. But you're going to need a pencil and a subsequent eraser to start out with. You're also going to be needing a pair of scissors. Paper cutting scissors are absolutely fine, or any pair of scissors you have in your house will work great. The weird tool this week is actually a Q-tip. If you don't have one of these, I suggest using a back of a pencil eraser, but I believe everybody should have Q-tips. You're also going to need a glue stick or a bottle of glue. You'll also need some black and orange paint or black and orange markers if you do not have paint at your house. If you're using markers, you don't need a Q-tip. You're also going to need some water and a paper towel if you're using paint, and don't spill it like I just did all over the paper, which I'm going to use, but if you are painting, you need those things. You'll also need 2 sheets of preferably dry paper. One of them should be in the color orange and the other should be in the color yellow. Obviously, you can make these colors whatever you want. I'm choosing these two today. So, let's get started with the craft. So I'm going to begin by taking my yellow piece of paper and drawing a really organic shape on the paper. As you can see, I'm kind of going very rough-handed with it. That's perfectly okay. I'm just trying to get something down on the paper so that way I can recreate it. I'm actually going to make it a little bit smaller, so I'm drawing inside of the pattern I just drew. And I'm trying to make it a little bit gourd-like. It doesn't quite look like a pumpkin, but it does resemble the family that the pumpkin is from. So once I have the shape that I like, I'm going to cut it out with a pair of scissors. And it's okay if you're not absolutely perfect here. My cutting skills aren't the greatest either, but we'll manage to survive, I think. It's okay if you can still see the pencil lines on your drawing. I didn't erase mine, but I'm just going to put the pencil side drawing face down on the other sheet of paper we are going to be using today. You'll see in a minute. So once I have my pumpkin cut out, I'm going to flip it over so that the pencil drawing side is the side facing down, and I'm going to glue that side to the orange piece of paper that I have to give it a nice background. Once I have all of the sides glued, I'm going to just press it down in the center-ish of the second piece of paper and press it down to make sure that it's nice and secure. Now that I have my two pieces of paper, I am going to trim the sides a little bit because I don't like how tall the orange paper is as opposed to my small pumpkin. So I'm just going to trim the sides. You can keep the paper to whatever size that you want. Obviously it's totally up to you, artist's choice here, but I am going to trim mine down because I think it looks a little nicer. And I can then reuse this as a card or something else later on down the road, which is super nice. Now that I have it all cut out, let's move on to the next step. Sorry for the weird shot here, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw very, very lightly some lines going towards the bottom and top of the pumpkin, like so. I'm just trying to follow the shape of the pumpkin that I made, but that way it gives a little bit more of a realistic appearance. But you can draw your lines however you want, so artist's choice once again. And I'm going to only draw about 7 or so of these just to make it just enough so that it appears nice and even and to my liking. It's okay if they're not neat either, we're going to be painting over it anyway. So, speaking of paint, let's get my palette out, and I'm going to take my black paint and put a little bit on so that way I can mix it with a little water to kind of emulsify the paint to a thinner substance so it's easier for me to paint on the paper. Once I have my paint down and I've found a paintbrush, I'm going to just load my brush with some paint, dip it in some water, and mix it around so that way I get a bit of a thinner consistency. I'm then going to paint in upward strokes following the lines that I have created. It's okay if you're not perfect. I think the more rustic it looks, the better, or the more rustic or uneven you are with it, the more rustic it looks and a little bit painterly. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to continue this through all of the lines that I have made, just so that way we get a nice outline for our pumpkin. You can even do thick, solid black lines at the bottom and the top if you really want to. Artist's choice, once again. But I'm just going to leave that be and just do the lines going up and down the pumpkin here. I am also going to be adding the stem at the top by just painting kind of an off-centered square. And then I'm going to be taking my orange paint, putting it on my palette, and this is what we're going to use to create the Kusama trademark polka dots. So I'm going to grab my Q-tip, or the end of my pencil eraser, and I'm going to dip it into the orange paint and lightly tap up and down these sections between the black lines of my pumpkin. And as you can see, this gives a really nice polka dotted effect, and adds a little bit of color to our pumpkin. I'm following the lines that I had made with the black paint, just so that way everything is nice and congruent and it feels a little bit more realistic than it actually is, because I don't think pumpkins are polka dotted. And I'm just going to continue this throughout the rest of the pumpkin. Obviously you can use whatever color palette you want. I'm choosing to stick with black, yellow, and orange just because I think those are really pumpkin-y colors, but you can choose whatever you want to do. I also alternated my polka dots with the colors, so as you can see, I'm adding some black polka dots in the mix as well as orange polka dots, just because I think that adds a little bit of a texture and gradient to it. And then what I'm doing is I had already previously cut out these red circles, and I'm adding them to the background of my paper, just so that way I feel like you get the polka dot all throughout the piece. And here we have our finished craft. I really like it. I like how nice and polka dotty and fun it looks. I really hope you enjoyed making it along with me, and I can't wait to see what craft I have in store for you guys next week. Bye!